All right, next up, I believe we have Jack Merrill. Is Jack Merrill in the house? All right, Jack Merrill is from Maine, and he bought his first boat in 1976, the Kingpin, lobstered her until 1980. There's a whole bunch of information on here. I'll let you give him more of it. But in the tote. Yeah. Welcome. Good to see you again.
Okay, so yeah, this is my fourth time in Astoria. Really grateful for that. And Jay Speakman always asked me to say something about the fishery before I get on to my poetry. And so I'm going to explain a little bit about the East Coast fishery that I'm involved in, the lobster fishery. The fishing in Maine, lobster fishing in Maine is a trap-only fishery. No dragging or diving allowed. It's almost exclusively a day trip fishery with boats ranging from roughly 40 to 48 feet. And while lobsters can live to be 100 years old, we have strict size limits that allow us to take them between the ages of approximately 6 to 20 years old, or 1 to 4 pounds. The size limits are set to protect young and adult lobsters so that they can continue to produce brood stock and ensure a healthy future. Egg-bearing lobsters, females, are protected for life when fishermen notch their right tail flipper. We have almost no bycatch in our fishery as everything lands on the deck alive and everything is tossed back overboard alive, if not kept to sell. The lobsters we do sell get tossed into a live saltwater tank on deck, and everything is sold as a live product. I don't have time to tell you about all the regulations we fish with, but for the most part, lobstermen approve and have asked for the laws they have. We are constantly working to maintain a stewardship position, but no one can argue that that relationship hasn't been highly successful. A slight downturn this year, followed by 10 years of record catches. One interesting and perhaps key regulation that lobstermen asked for was an owner-operator law. It's in place partly to keep corporate interests out. It simply states that a boat must be operated by its owner while fishing, and you're also limited by the number of traps you can fish. The politics of commercial fishing will drive anyone crazy, with regulators too often out of touch with the realities on the water, depending on the best science available, and pressured by special interest groups. There's a never-ending battle to keep fishing. We have the Maine Lobstermen's Association, the largest fisheries organization in the East Coast, to help fight the battles. Educating our politicians and establishing a close relationship with the scientific community remains an important part of MLA's business. The lobstering tradition is a large part of the economic and cultural heritage of coastal Maine, and we don't want to lose that identity. So that's about the fishery. If you have questions, you can ask me later. Thank you. Thank you. So, like most poets, I write on a variety of themes, but here are some fishing poems that I've written over the years. The first one I'm going to read is probably 30 years old, and I like it just because it gets me in a rhythm, or it's supposed to get me in a rhythm. And it's called Fall Fishing. Fall fishing. Rainbow sky over colored mountains, clouds float in black fists. The ocean seas in acrobatic tumbles, white and blue, yellow, green, foaming like mankind. The wind blows salt spray and cold awareness into the faces of the men who haul back the past. This next poem is in the anthology. I've got a number of poems in the anthology, Anchored in Deep Water, but this one is called The Relationship. It is not as if one is the truth and one is lies. It is not as if one is love and one is hate. It is not as if one is crooked and one is straight. We navigate the changes in the tide. The boat bucks tossed by a random sea. Arms and shoulders hold the wheel like taut rope. Muscles straining, eyes fixed seaward. The tangled waters turn inside out. It is not as if one is certain and one is in doubt. Thank you. This This one is called Outward Bound. We get up early in the morning. For the afternoon, they gave gale warnings. It's okay, it's a life we've been born in, on an ocean we've been sworn into. A life of dreams, money-making schemes, reality just a paycheck away, always a paycheck away. Just a leaky hatch, a wet wooden match, a shaft that's worn, a net that's torn, oil on deck, hydraulic line, which hose this time? You can bet as we ready for our next set, the Coast Guard's boarding for inspection. My middle finger's getting an erection. No, I respect what they do, though I'm not sure about the crew. We just spent a week ashore. Weather's coming. Time to fish is running short. Soon we'll have to beat for port. A trip aborted will leave us poor. I can't help but think this is no way to win the war. But our spirits fill when they've left us alone till the wind comes up and we're drenched to the bone. The hold's half full, we wash down, having pulled our last pull, and turn the wheel towards drier ground, though in our hearts we knew that if we were truly headed home, we'd be outward bound. Thank you. So this is, I need your participation, okay? So when I point at you like that, I want you to say, I'm going fishing. We do that? All right. Going fishing. No, Mama, I can't go to the store. Don't have time to do my chores. Can't join the soldiers to fight the war. No, Mama, I'm headed to the shore, and I'm going. That's my mistake. No, Mama, I'm not going to the dance. I'm not going to put on any fancy pants. I'm not going to stand in line and hold hands. No, Mama, far from land, I'm going fishing. I'm sorry, teacher, I have no time for notes, no time for papers, to write papers or anecdotes, no time to dissect or bottle things. I can't read books at the coming of spring. I'm sorry, teacher, school's not my thing. I'm sorry, sirs, I know my payments are late. I've had lots of problems keeping up with the rates. It's not that I intentionally procrastinate. It's just awfully hard to concentrate when I know tomorrow with what I can borrow. I know, Judge, you'd like to send me to jail, but in there I'm sure my health would fail. It's not that I'm afraid to face Judgment Day. The man upstairs can have his say. But if he'll let me just have one last sail, he can throw me over the leeward rail. You see, Judge, no matter what the sentence, for my penance, I'm going fishing. Thank you. Okay, this is one of two Walmart poems I've got. I'm going to read the next one, the other one tomorrow night, but this is called Coffee at Walmart. We were slugging down coffee at Walmart. The local coffee shop closed down months ago. The cigarette stains and great fish stories, which I could almost smell, were a thing of the past. There was almost no debate. The board had approved it. They kept the kickbacks quiet. It was a beautiful summer morning, no wind. Being fishermen, we knew we shouldn't be here. We were restless, with noses that wanted to sail, but the waters were closed. Dynamic management was taking place. In places we knew the fish were plentiful, the quota was full. The council had convened. One of the older men leaned over the table. His wind-worn face managed a wry smile. There were days I cursed the sea, he said, and days the sea cursed me. But even at the worst, the coffee tasted better than this. This is part of a series of poems. It's actually a mystery. It'll be a mystery poetry book someday, I guess. It's day 12, but has nothing to do with the poem, really. The fisherman cast his expertise, challenged in landing his worm over the deep hole, satisfaction of the drop in perfect balance with the cold, chill first sight of the orange-eyed sun. Anticipation, muscles taut, ready for action, playing the rod, flick of the wrist, the tempting red jig dancing on the water's surface, hoping for a strike. This, he thinks, we do all day. In each conversation, in each self-dream, each angelic smile, turn of the hips, perfect pearls, wet lips. She dances for him, and him only, in the smoke under the blue lights, 2 doors down from the tobacco store and downstairs from the apartment where the coffee cup sits cold on the counter's edge. For him and him only, the hook sinks slowly, a low note on a tenor sax. She turns her back and curls her sex around a pole. Fishing is exciting business. Thank you. Thank you. This is called Lobsterman's Blues. It's no sea cruise. And I probably stole a few lines from a blues song or two, but anyway. On the very first string, rope wraps around my leg, pulled into the stern, and I start to beg. Going over the side is a real concern. The good Lord says, son, hate to give you the news, but what you've got is the Lobsterman's Blues. It was quite a strain, but I got myself free. Not too much pain, just some swelling in the knee. I started to my next gang of traps when my boat hits a log. Checked it all out, guess everything's all right, but now I'm surrounded by fog. Where the hell's my gear? Looking at the radar, the plotter, and out the window at the same time, it's hard to steer. Collision is a lobsterman's greatest fear. My end buoy's here somewhere, I know it's near. My sternman's back baiting bags, clearly he doesn't have a clue. I'm here paying for the lobsterman's blues. The sea's been growing, the wind's been blowing, the season's coming to an end, but I've still got traps to tend. The belts on the engine are all worn. My oil pants are pretty well torn. My davy rod's been bent. My crew's energy's almost spent. Rocking and rolling is plain to see. Surely is getting the better of me. The windows are leaking again. The deck hatches too. Seems you just can't win. Hydraulic fluids leaking from a hauler hose. Last trip, the steering gear got froze. But the lobster catch was all that mattered. We took a good one and my coffee cup shattered. At least it wasn't a lunch pail or a cell phone. The next wave throws us sideways and the boat lets out a groan. I've heard they're hitting on the heavy on the western shore. Of course, I set all my traps to the east, thinking that's where I'd get the big hauls. Not one of my best calls. But the northeast wind has made it mighty rough, and it's too late to shift them all, so I've got to stay here and stand tough. They either crawl or we wait until next fall. And when I finally hit the shore, it looks for sure that you can spread the news. I'm taking off my boots, putting on my walking shoes. You see, I've got a real bad case of the lobsterman's blues. You doing all right, time-wise? I just got a couple more. Oh, boy. All right. I'll whip through it. Winter's over. Winter took off its white robe and quietly melted into ravenous puddles. The black crows eagerly hopped on patches of bare ground. The fishing boats revved their long sleeping engines. The dip nets stirred up rancid bait, ready to set traps. The skiffs huddled together behind the float, tug on their bow lines. Anticipation starts. Moving again. A trudge becomes a trot. Bones loosen up. Everything seems to flow downhill towards the docks. From the wood stove to the harbor, as if a door has opened, a child was born, and a song sings spring. Thank you. See, this is called the mooring. The end of the day in the darkness of the harbor, edging forward along the starboard rail, each step a challenge, cold concentration, heavy arms lift the change over the bow bit. The frozen air holds a man hostage, but we're almost home. The body moves forward on its own, pulled into the skiff by a gentle swell. Careful now, find those oars with frozen fingers, painfully grip and pull, straighten, steady, point the bow towards the docks, as if the tide had a hold of you, slowly ebbing towards a warm home, food never tasting better, sleep a dream away, rowing home with a cold, clean soul. And I'll finish up with this one. It's pretty recent. It's called Old Tud, and Anybody know someone named Tud? We have some Tuds on the East Coast, anyway. Old Tud. Remember when men were men and they set out to sea? Let's remember them. Old Tud was tough. He could sew a sail on a barrel on a deck as the winds did wail. Throw a harpoon at a shark or a whale from the bow of a scow in a mighty howl of a merciless gale. Far from land, hand over hand, he'd pull in cod. On a trawl he'd set, no fear in him, for his maker he'd met. After all, the man was no more than a following sea, and heaven no more than an island's lee. Damp in his wool and oilskins, just like a fish with fins, old Tud was comfortable in his waterlogged skin. He might take off his boots for a spell. The scales in his feet made a beautiful smell. Rocked back and forth by a constant swell, into his bunk for an hour he'd crawl, but even in his bunk he'd haul and haul. Thank you.